Welcome to episode 44 of 1530. Today we're going to be discussing, of course, the Australian Open's coming up here right around the corner down under. Getting ready for the summer in Melbourne, the first Grand Slam of the year. I know it's always really exciting. It's one that Djokovic has completely owned. It's been his best slam by far. Of course, we're still in a three-way tie at 20 slams apiece between Nadal, Djokovic, and Federer. Federer won't be there because of injury, but we'll see if Djokovic can extend and go to 21 slams and break that tie, or we'll talk a little about Rafa Nadal, how he's looking out of his injuries to start the year. There's been a couple warm-up tournaments. There's been a lot of drama with Djokovic. We'll talk about that with not being vaccinated and some of the ways he's gone about that and some of those drama. And it might not be over yet. I know the Australian government is threatening to maybe exile him again, or to basically kick him out of the country again. So we'll see what happens, but I know Tennis Australia is kind of standing behind Djokovic. So lots of good things to discuss in today's episode. We'll go ahead and get started with the stat of the day. As always, stat of the day today is 115, 115. That was the serve factor for Rafael Nadal in the Melbourne final against Cressy to start the year. So first of all, Melbourne, kind of weird, right? Usually they don't host they host the Grand Slam, but they usually don't host a Masters tournament. So we're not talking about the Australian Open. We're talking about the Masters 250 tournament. It was a relatively easy draw, but Nadal still won. That's another title that he was able to bag. And Cressy was a young American who does a lot of serve and volley. Pretty exciting player. I'd never really heard of him, but he made the final, upset Dimitrov in the semifinals. But Nadal, this is all about Nadal. Serve factor of 115. Just to remind listeners about the serve factor, you basically combine, it's looking at the full picture of your serve, the percentage of points you win on your first serve. Then you kind of weigh that with the amount of first serves that you get in, the percentage you get in, and then you add that to your second serve points won. So really anything over 100 is pretty good. In fact, Nadal's career serve factor is 105, which is stellar. If you just take his average results over his career, and that's the number you come up with. And his was at 115 that day against Cressy. Of course, you could argue, well, Cressy maybe, had a big serve and volley, not the best at the return. But if you're a Nadal fan looking at those numbers, you should be pretty pleased. His serve speeds were pretty good as well. His highest speed was 200 kilometers per hour. About 124 miles per hour, which is for Nadal pretty dang good. There's been other times where he's flattened his serve out more and gone for a little bit more pace, like the year he won the U.S. Open, the first time he won the U.S. Open. But for Nadal, career-wise, that's a really good speed for him. His average first serve was 117 miles an hour, 189 kilometers per hour. So that's about what Djokovic and Federer go for on their first serves. Pretty good numbers, especially because Nadal has a lot of good spin and places the serve. So honestly, he's kind of passing the eye test from what little I kind of watched some more highlights, but watching highlights and seeing those numbers, pretty impressive for Nadal, where he was pretty hobbled with injuries. Middle of last season, kind of called his season after the City Open final. He didn't even play in the U.S. Open. So long story short, I feel like if Nadal gets a good draw, I would not be surprised to see Nadal in the final. As far as winning it, maybe. Of course, he's getting used to the courts in Melbourne. He played on the same court and won the title in the 250 as the same courts he'll be playing for the Australian Open. But a lot depends on the number one seed, Djokovic, which we're going to talk a lot about. But Matt, as a Nadal fan, what are your thoughts on Rafa's good start to the year?
That's great news, right? So he played, 3 matches here in this little lead up?
Yep.
And he didn't drop a set, but he did face 9 break points over those 6 sets. That's kind of a lot. He held 5 of the 9. So I don't know. He's serving well, but there's still some pressure on that serve. Hopefully he can kind of clean that up. Obviously in these tournaments, he was breaking back and it didn't really matter. But when you're playing longer matches and bigger competition, you gotta keep the break points out. Maybe nine break points over 3 matches isn't that many, but just over 50% holding those break points, I think that's pretty low.
Yeah,
So
definitely something to watch for. It's a good point.
yeah. So, but we'll see. Yeah, I agree. I think he's got a chance to do well. We'll see what happens. We'll see what the draw looks like when it comes out.
Yeah, I know sometimes, at least for me, it's, I think Nadal can find a way to get it done. He's not obviously the best hardcourt player in the world, but when I see him with this type of freshness and energy, those are the years that he's either won the title. He's won it once down under Melbourne. He's won all the other slams more than once, but Melbourne is the only one he hasn't been able to bag a second time. He's made a bunch of finals, but the years that he's either made the final or won it, he's looked very fresh. And this year, I feel like he's looking that he doesn't look kind of haggard. I mean, of course, he didn't have the long season with the ATP finals and the US Open. So he looks motivated to me, but like you're saying, a lot depends on best of 5. How does his body hold up? And who is he playing against? Tsitsipas, to remind the listeners, he beat Nadal last year, and he was up. Nadal was up 2 sets to love, and Tsitsipas overcame that and played amazing. And Nadal didn't play bad. Tsitsipas pulled out the offense and beat him. Even though that was one where, Nadal has only lost 2 matches in his career, being 2 sets to love up. So one of the better records. I know Federer has had several heartbreaks in that department. Nadal doesn't have very many 2 sets to love upsets. So we'll see. There's a lot to be seen. It'll be really interesting to see the draw, see what Nadal gets. Keep trying to say Djokovic. I guess that's what we need to talk about next. So, Matt, what's up with the drama with Djokovic? No, there's a lot of drama with him with not being vaccinated and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure everybody's followed it in the news. At the end of the day, he got the exemption, and he'll be there in Australia. I guess there's one more possibility of something happening, but I mean, the way things have gone so far, you expect him to play. If you're Rafa and anybody else, you just expect that you're going to be facing him, or that he'll be there, and go from there. It is what it is. Joke has probably a better ability than anybody. I mean, I'd say all these athletes, if you're playing a professional level, you have an ability to block things out, but Joke, more than anybody, is able to just isolate himself and put himself in a vacuum and not let these things affect him. So as far as preparing for the Australian Open, I mean, if anything, it probably helps him build a little.
Yeah, I had that same thought because I know a lot of the public, I mean, in general, but especially Australia, kind of getting a little bit tired of COVID, a little bit of COVID fatigue, and they knew that every player is supposed to be vaccinated. Of course, there was an exemption process. Apparently, supposed to be a blind process so that they wouldn't be seen as playing favorites. Only a handful of exemptions were handed out. Of course, one went to Djokovic, supposedly because he's had COVID within the last 6 months. Of course, one of the details that was interesting is that apparently he had known about testing positive and received the result back, and then he was pictured in social media or out in the public maskless around people. So there's some little bit shade, I guess, being thrown at Djokovic right now. He's taking a lot of heat, but like you're saying, I feel like he almost thrives on that sometimes.
Yeah.
But it will be interesting to see because the crowd at the US Open, if you remember, he's going for the calendar slam. The crowd was very supportive of Djokovic, and that meant quite a bit to him. Of course, he didn't win that match, the pressure or the long season or Medvedev playing too good, whatever it was. It'll be interesting to see if Djokovic is cast as a huge villain and if he's able to, do what he usually does especially when he's playing against Federer, Nadal, some of these courts where, Federer and Nadal are more beloved, you could say. So, yeah, be interesting to see his motivation factor. I think the biggest thing is practice. I guess obviously he's practicing now, and he practiced a little bit in Spain before coming to Australia. But how much is his routine off? Usually he plays kind of a warm-up tournament down there. Yeah. Probably won't affect him too much, but, he was holed up in that hotel for a few days. So, like I said, still a chance that he, doesn't play, but I'd say it's pretty small at this point. The government would have to really pull out all their stops to kick him out. So definitely still the favorite, you would say, right?
I would say so.
Pretty safe favorite, especially down under. I think that's until proven otherwise. That's almost like his tournament. So yeah, pretty interesting. I'd give it the second odds. I don't think Ultimate Tennis Stats quite had that yet, but I would definitely give the second odds probably to Nadal. Wouldn't be as high as Djokovic's, but would be pretty
Where do you
high
think
there.
Med's falling?
We know. Go ahead.
I was just asking, where do you think Medvedev is falling on
Ooh.
that?
Yeah, I would say I'd probably put him ahead of Zverev as a favorite. Close to Nadal, but I'd probably still give the edge to Nadal on that one. But yeah, Medvedev's got to be right there, I would say. And then Zverev after that. And then that's what I was going to say after that. Two players that have done really well, Team and Tsitsipas have done really well down under. You know, they've made some finals, semifinals. You know, Tsitsipas is playing, but I know he's been struggling with injuries, including the start of this year in Australia. And Team is not playing. I believe Team and Federer are the only two out of the men's top 20 that are not going to play. So Team's still struggling with injuries. Weird to see him out. You know, wonder if he could have bagged another slam by now. But regardless, right, for now he's a one slam wonder, and hope that he gets back, heals up so he can compete again because he's a great competitor. But yeah, kind of weird. I feel like with Team and Tsitsipas in the mix, I might level it more after Djokovic. But it's really looking like I'd be surprised if it wasn't Djokovic, Nadal, Medvedev, or Zverev, one of those guys winning the title. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Some dark horses, you know, Dimitrov plays pretty well down under. He's made a semifinal, had an epic 5-setter against Nadal and lost. He's looked pretty strong to start the season. He did lose to Cressy in 2 tight sets, but he's looking pretty good when he's healthy. He can go kind of far. He could be maybe a dark horse guy. Who else was I thinking about? Kokkinakis, one of the Australians. He's been playing pretty well too, warming up down there. I don't believe Kyrgios is going to play. Nick Kyrgios, at least last I read. And then Tommy Paul, American. So I feel like there's a lot of young people that could maybe make a run, but just really hard to see someone outside the top couple guys, especially outside of Djokovic, really winning. It'd be interesting to see who makes the final, right? Because we know who's set, right? It's Medvedev and Nadal, or Medvedev and Djokovic. Because Djokovic is the 1 seed, Medvedev's the 2 seed. Who gets Nadal on their side of the draw, right? What if Djokovic gets Nadal? That could be a tough semifinal if they make it there, and then who knows what happens in the final. So it's really going to depend on who gets Zverev and who gets Nadal. If they both end up on one person's side of the draw, that could be really tricky. Assuming everyone wins out, right? There are always upsets and things. So I don't know. I'll be really interested to see the draw this time around.
Yeah, I think it'll play a large factor in the success of some of these players.
Yeah.
As it always does,
of course, you got other players, right? That'll be very interesting to see how they play. Sinner, as always. Casper Ruud had a great season last year, including on hard court, that we kind of got destroyed in the U.S. Open, kind of early rounds against Botique van de Sandschulp. Probably butchered that pretty badly. The Dutchman. He made a run at the U.S. Open, lost in the quarterfinals to Medvedev in 4 sets. Kind of an unknown guy that I didn't know about until that tournament, and he played pretty well. He's got kind of a big man's game, but can also rally pretty well and can really play behind his serve. He's ranked now 56 in the world, and he's been playing. I've been, following a little bit of the scores there and seeing that he's had some wins as well to start the season. Interested to see how he does, because he really made a run at the U.S. Open. And then some other guys, right? Tsitsipas, I mentioned his injuries, but he's played really well down under. If he can get going and stay healthy and win a couple matches, he can go really far as always. Rublev, be interesting to check how well he does down under, but he's always got a big game. So a lot of guys will be fun to watch, but again, it all comes back to that Novak guy. He's too good. Too good down under.
Yep. Is Andy playing? Andy Murray?
Andy Murray's playing, yeah. So the first tournament down under, he played pretty poorly and lost early on. But the one he's playing in right now, I believe it's Sydney. He's had a couple great match wins. He beat Nicolas Bassishvili in a very tight match, and he beat another good competitor. I can't remember who he beat. But Andy's looking pretty good now. To start the season, you're like, oh, no, he's not going to do great. But he's doing okay now, so hope to see him play and be healthy. Yeah. always a great player. Let's see, what else do we got? I wanted to look at some numbers because made me think about our Dutch friend, the Botik van de Zandschulp, and how does a player go from being relatively unknown, high hundreds, couple hundred in the world, to 56 and kind of be that consistent. So I was looking at the numbers, and I was looking. I thought we'd see kind of some dramatic changes, but a lot of it was pretty interesting. So I drew some of the graphs here at ultimatetennistats.com. So if you go to like second serve, points one, drawing the chart, that one is pretty significant. That one goes from, let's see, in 2020, he was below 40%, so at like 37%, and he was all the way, not quite 50% in 2021. So, usually we're used to seeing, so it looks like it's 49%. Used to seeing a little bit above 50 being pretty for some of the top players. Not quite there, but huge dramatic improvement. So kind of normal to see that there. Don't know how he kind of turned that on to go, keep his second serve and win points behind it really well, but goes from a 37% to 49%. So huge number change there. Some of the other stuff on the return looked about the same though. So I'll pull that up here. Let's go to return points one, draw on the chart from 2020. Yeah, so it looks like it's about 31% to 36%. So 5% difference. So, that's, I guess that's decently big in tennis, but not as drastic as his second serve points one graph. And then his aces, let's draw that chart here. Aces went up a decent amount as well. Let's see, is this on? And part of it could be, playing more matches and things like that, because this is not a percentage, this is numbers. So went from 100 to 170 aces. So it looks like he really did have a meteoric rise. Maybe I was confusing him with someone else's numbers and I was looking at. I'm like, oh, they were about the same. But, it'd be interesting to see what's behind that, right? A lot of it's confidence. His breakpoint numbers were quite a bit better too. So, sometimes it's like, how do you win the big points? I don't know. You find a way to win them, right? But yeah, really impressed with him. I wondered, we'll see if 2021 was an anomaly, because some of his graphs are showing that 2022 is closer back to his 2020 numbers. So kind of doing like a big triangle graph. So, but it's a small sample size. We'll see what he does throughout the season, but pretty fun player to watch. Reminds me a little bit of Benoit Paire with some of the skill set, really good two-handed backhand, and can kind of go, more spinny just to kind of keep it in, but then all of a sudden he can accelerate for some big winners. So long rallies, he can really work with that serve too. Interested to see how he does. I don't know, Matt, any top things? Last time we did a top 10 of things we learned about the ATP finals. Any top things that you're looking forward to this year for the Australian Open?
Off the top of my head, I don't know. I'm just excited to see good tennis and a healthy Rafa.
Yeah.
Good competition. So
Absolutely.
always looking for somebody to have a breakout match, a breakout tournament rather. It's always good to see fresh blood, new blood. So hopefully we got some people that'll come shine. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, that's something that came to my mind too, whether it's, a name that's already seen some success, but kind of, coming back for some more, whether it's like Monfils making a run. I think he won one of the smaller tournaments. He's a little bit older, but he's a fan favorite. Last year, I believe it was last year, right, with Aslan Karatsev, the Russian, who came out of nowhere and made the semifinals, I think, right? Lost to Djokovic, but that might have even been a 4-set match, I think, or at least a 3-setter that was trickier for Djokovic. So, yeah, it's always fun to see someone's debut kind of breakout match. That's why I wonder if like Kokkinakis, he can kind of get hot, or Tommy Paul, or some of these young guns that really haven't made it very far, or Sinner, or if we're just going to see, some of the other guys who, are Dimitrov, right? He's kind of been around a long time, but he's made the semis in Australia before, but hasn't really gone that far lately. So Yeah, I'm hoping, like you're saying, some new names are always fun. I like to learn about new names, new play styles, but it's also fun to see the old guys, especially guys that haven't won a lot, to kind of make
Mhm.
another run. So that's kind of what I'm excited for. Another thing that I'm pretty excited for is just to see the Australian crowd. I think this is the Australian crowd's allowed, but I don't think last year there was a crowd in Australia, was there? I'm trying to remember. Don't know.
Was maybe that was Paris. Was that French that they had the curfew
No.
set, so they had to.
Yeah. I think actually it was just the U.S. Open in 2020 was the only one that didn't play without a crowd. So, but I think it'll be more capacity. I think we'll see more energy. I think it's just fun to watch the sporting, the sport played with all that energy and stuff from behind the fans with the fans. Because I know, some of it's been hard with COVID. Even when there's fans there, sometimes it's not the same because there's not as many, not the same energy. So, pretty excited. I think everyone's supposed to be vaccinated. I think they'll be more full in capacity, is my understanding. So. That'll be fun to see. I'm also excited. Medvedev, right? He's kind of coming off of his Grand Slam, his first win, and he's been pretty dynamite on hard court. See if he can follow it up. I don't know. Were you able to see or hear much about the ATP Cup, Matt, in Australia? Because Djokovic didn't go to it because he wasn't vaccinated. Yeah, Nadal didn't play either, but it was really fun to see kind of a glimpse and preview into the post Djokovic Nadal Federer world, because usually, let's face it, right? If you have Djokovic, Nadal, Federer, one of those guys, your country is going to go pretty far, right? Switzerland, Spain, Serbia, they were always going pretty far in that competition. But this time they weren't. And so Spain actually did make the final without Nadal, but they lost to the Canadians. Felix Auger-Aliassime and Shapovalov, they played amazing and were able to beat Spain. They upset Russia in the semifinals. And even though Medvedev won his singles match, the other guy lost his singles match, the other Russian, and they lost the doubles match. So kind of cool to see that. The parity was pretty exciting instead of just, a Djokovic-led team destroying everybody. So that was pretty fun for me to kind of follow. And like I said, it's kind of a glimpse of maybe what's to come. And there's really some good players out there, but there's a lot of parity too.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I think that's pretty much all we have right now, right? We're just looking forward toward, who can win these last warm-up tournaments like Sydney, and then what the draw is going to look like, and then we'll really have a better idea for which matches to look out for, when are going to be the popcorn matches. The first round is always a good match or two. Oh yeah, and Stan Wawrinka's not playing either, former Australian Open champ. So kind of rough not having the two Swiss men there, but. Yeah, fun as always to cover tennis and kind of kicking off the season really with the Grand Slam. So, any last things from you, Matt?
I think that's everything.
Yeah. Well, then, as always, please visit us at cognitionsphere.com. Our theme music was brought to us by Kevin MacLeod with excerpts from his song Cool Rock. And please share our podcast with a friend that loves tennis. And until next time, we'll see you on the court. All right, I think it ended. Well, cool. We'll just pay attention to the draw and see if we want to do another one.